Hello, Galaxy. I'm Chris Perillo, and I just waved. You can't see me right now, but this video is all about the photos taken with the iPhone 7 Plus and the iPhone 8 Plus. You're always going to see the iPhone 7 Plus photos taken on the left, where Boba Fett is currently standing, the figurine that's in the foreground, if you're not familiar with who Boba Fett is. And on the right, it's always going to be the photos taken with the iPhone 8 Plus. So right now, you see a whole bunch of out-of-focus characters right now because depth of field. So I'm just going to step you through everything here. I'm screencasting on the new iOS 11e iPad Pro, and so you're seeing the video recording in its native aspect ratio as well as the photos in their native aspect ratio and resolution. None of these photos were touched, but I have to mention that because I have the ability to move this slider around, including the little chiclet, to better indicate where you may want to pay attention. If I happen to be pointing out a certain area of the image, I'm just using an app. I found an app that would allow me to do this, and so it's super easy, and since I hate video editing and production, this is the best I can do. If you see any video artifacting, hopefully it will clear up relatively quickly as we're able to move through the series of photos that I took today, starting at about 8 a.m. and going till nighttime. Whenever that was, a few hours ago. Been up for a while. So, I took this shot in HDR on both cameras. Each time that we're doing a comparison here, I pretty much had the same settings on each camera and was able to verify with the EXIF headers to make sure that I had the right one placed in the right position for this demonstration. But I will tell you that more often than not, and I would say pretty much all the time, the HDR shots on the iPhone 8 Plus camera came out sharper and also more vibrant. Like the colors were truer to life. And this was really prevalent when I took a look at the shots side by side, did my best to get the angle pretty close. But if you can't tell that this character is popping with the iPhone 8 Plus, you may need to recalibrate your screen. If not that, then take a look at the brown wallpaper. I'm sorry, wallpaper. The brown paint on the wall behind Boba Fett. It's definitely a lot more rich in the iPhone 8 Plus camera versus the iPhone 7 Plus camera. And it's, I'd say, slightly more true to life on the iPhone 8 camera, the yellow paint that you see behind this particular character, Wicket, standing atop the vintage Ewok village. Everything else, I would say, was a wash. Hera looks the same at this distance and at this focal point or level on either the iPhone 8 camera or the iPhone 7. And when I say 7 versus 8, understand I'm always talking about Plus, because those are the only two iPhones that I'm currently using in this particular demonstration. So yeah, this is very indicative of a lot of the shots that you're going to see in this particular video. The shots on the 8 are sharper and more vibrant. So I'm going to do my best to scroll to the next one. Normally, I would never take this shot, but I was just curious, right? And so I think you can see some other dramatic differences between the two using the effective slow sync flash on the iPhone 8 Plus camera. Everybody gets that. It's a freebie. It comes with it. There's nothing to toggle, which basically enables you to fire the flash at lower shutter speeds, making for a better photo for the most part. And I would say that take a look at the brown throughout the image, and it's more natural on the iPhone 8 image than it is on the iPhone 7 image. Like even the vehicles themselves, the Imperial Walker here, it's a lot more true to life silver in the iPhone 8 Plus picture than it is on the iPhone 7 Plus picture, which kind of has a yellow tint to it. Stood at the same distance and everything. I would never save this shot at all. I was just curious. I was standing there. I'm like, well, let's see what happens. But even the cloud car here, this orange vehicle, the orange pops on the iPhone 8 picture versus the iPhone 7 picture, which is definitely a lot more dull. The chicken walker, the scout walker, looks better in the iPhone 8 than it does in the iPhone 7. So pretty much throughout the entire image. And again, look at the paint differences between the 7 and the 8. And I would say that if you were standing in the room and looked at the shot, you would say that the 8 was closer to the hues that were, I guess, being recorded with these particular photos. So I think it did a pretty outstanding job despite being so close with the camera. Some of the details on the 7 here on this little vehicle up front down here, sorry if you can't really see the chiclet, they were blown out a bit with the iPhone 7 camera versus the iPhone 8 camera. Not as much blowout in the lighter areas. I was surprised that I really didn't see too many, if any, overexposed areas standing this close, with the iPhone 8 camera, as much as I did here with the iPhone 7 camera, including on this little mini rig as well, if you know what that is at all. Moving on. Okay, this was definitely a lot more dramatic. So, didn't use a flash. This is just an indoor shot, daytime. There's daylight flooding the room, but certainly not a bright room, not saturated with light. But the differences are pretty stark. You can look pretty much at any one of these 3PO figurines or heads and see very clearly that the photo taken with the iPhone 8 Plus showcases a much more goldenrod. The colors are definitely muted on the iPhone 7 camera versus the iPhone 8 camera. And you can see even sharpness differences, or you should be able to see sharpness differences. One area where I definitely saw sharpness differences is with this particular 3PO with the red arm. You may not recognize him, but he's definitely sharper, everything sharper in the iPhone 8 camera. I don't believe this was HDR, though. I think this was just a regular old shot that I took, which normally I would probably just take it in HDR just because I know there's a lot of reflectivity in 3PO. But the wind-up toy in the back, it's a way more accurate color in the iPhone 8 Plus. Another thing I did want to point out, down in this corner, the little cereal prize from last year's The Force Awakens, there's a 3PO, and you can actually, if you can get this close to the screen, the text is legible, so you can actually read the text on the iPhone 8 picture versus the 7 picture. It's a little more muddy. This is an issue I had with the 7 Plus and the 7 cameras last year. If you remember me kind of throwing up a fuss, I found that a lot of details on the corners of this iPhone 7 and the iPhone 7 Plus camera were rather nasty, especially even in comparison to the 6S. I thought the 6S in many cases took better shots than the 7 or the 7 Plus camera. Can't say the same with the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 8 Plus camera, the only one that I've really had an experience with, because for the most part, minus very few exceptions, the iPhone 8 or the iPhone 8 Plus camera has been rather astounding. I really, really appreciate the level of detail and sharpness and color and clarity in just about every shot. Not every shot, as you will see. But I thought this was a quite representative of, highlighting just how much more vibrant the same shot can be comparing the iPhone 7 to the iPhone 8. Moving on. All right. Back to toy photography. So this is an area, I guess an angle or shot that I actually like the 7 Plus camera, or the lens, the shot, the photo, a little more than the 8 Plus. And pretty much for one reason and one reason alone, especially when I was outside trying to pick up, whether or not I got the shot that I was looking for. The way that the iPhone 7 Plus processes HDR shots, these are both HDR, it showed me a greater level of, I guess, medium balance, specifically with the Stormtrooper's eye, this eye here. I could see it pop a little more, no pun intended. It's a Funko Pop vinyl toy, collectible. I can see it pop more on the iPhone 7 Plus shot, more so than the 8. The 8's definitely darker, to my eye, even sitting here now. That said, if you take a look at this particular area of the helmet, you'll notice that the reds are far more red. The reds pop even against the green background, and they're a bit more dull on the iPhone 7 Plus camera. So reds, I wouldn't say are as accurate as they could be on the 7 Plus camera, though I did appreciate, I guess moving towards the middle of the spectrum to better be able to highlight some of those darker areas. And this will be, I'll point to another example here in a bit. I think the 8 shot is far more satisfying because of the saturation of the red. I mean, it's strong. Even the grass behind the stormtrooper, you can see that it is more vibrant. So it's like, someone just splashed a magic wand over this photo and made everything pop. Again, no filters on my end. This is just the raw photos themselves. But yeah, this is definitely one of those shots that I would want to keep. Took a few shots that I'd want to keep, not all of them, but this is a good one. C-3PO standing there on a wicker chair thing. And, originally I was like, well, what can I take a picture of that's got a pretty decent level of detail? And I grabbed it, and I think I did a good job with this particular figure, because the detail work in his wiring, it shows up, and I don't know how well the screen recording is going to do. Most of the shot is out of focus, depth of field. I focused primarily, my focal point was pretty much the bridge of his nose up here on his helmet. But the wires are far more sharp and defined in the iPhone 8 Plus photo compared to the 7 Plus photo here. And it's a very subtle difference, but if you could see it and you're not able to see it the way I do, just take my word for it. It's a lot more sharp and defined on the iPhone 8 Plus camera. The one thing I guess that would be disappointing is the chest wasn't the focal point. I tried to use the bridge of 3PO's nose for the focal point. I don't know if that'd make much of a difference if they're relatively on the same plane of focus, but it's certainly indicative of the type of photos that I've taken elsewhere in terms of the differences between the 7 Plus and the 8 Plus. So I would definitely be happier with the 7 Plus photo were I to keep this image. This is a shot that really doesn't have much of a difference. So I grabbed a little Lego Vader, and you can't really see much of a difference here. I used a fill flash just to see what would happen, see if I could detect any differences. And if I did, they're very subtle. Very, very subtle. You can see a lot of the dust collecting on the Vader helmet, but it's like there's a yellowish tint to the iPhone 7 Plus photo versus the 8 Plus, and it's like the difference between the two is like right now someone has placed an onion skin over the lens, and then someone lifts it away. So I would say that again, everything in the iPhone 7 Plus photo is a bit more muted and unnatural compared to the iPhone 8 Plus. This is, again, very difficult to perceive the differences outright, but very, very minute differences. But for the most part, I would say that the iPhone 8 Plus, once again, took a more natural shot. I'm not sure if I really could see a lot of differences between these particular pictures, and you'll have to forgive me in doing this video now, because Seattle's about to undergo another amazing autumn. I love autumn. It's my favorite season of all time. I have taken tons of autumnal shots over the years. If I did pick out any differences between these two, and you could look at one and say, wow, that's pretty cool, and then you could look at the other one, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it does seem that the photo taken with the iPhone 8 Plus is a bit more, a bit darker. The iPhone 7 definitely, or the iPhone 7 Plus definitely kind of pops a bit more in terms of it's a little brighter. But I think that the color of the sky is unnatural, like especially when you're talking in the lower left-hand corner here. You're talking a very bright-ish blue versus the more natural color of the sky. So just take a look at the sky. And you'll see it get, dramatically different as we move further over here. So I think the balance of the sky was better done on the iPhone 8. I could always, change that in post. Not that I would outright. Another difference between the two, and I think my focal point was, somewhere around here with these leaves. The leaves taken in this particular area on the 7 Plus or the 8 Plus here, they're a bit sharper on the 8 Plus versus the 7. 7, you start losing some amount of detail. It gets like really muddy in here, but on the 8 Plus up here, it's not as muddy. It's pretty sharp, but that's been true to form, throughout this entire experience. But those are the two things that I would point out: the color of the sky being more natural here, and we're talking. This is about noontime high noon, right there. So the sun, if anything, would have been onto the right side, casting down. So it's odd that over here you would have such an unnatural color in the sky. Sticking with the autumn theme, we've got the iPhone 7 Plus and the iPhone 8 Plus picture here. The yellows are a bit more yellow, more vibrant. You can see with this particular tree, very yellow in the iPhone 8 Plus. Still yellow, but I guess not as poppy as the yellow on the iPhone 8 Plus. The leaves here in the red leaves up in this particular area, if you can see the chiclet, again sharper on the iPhone 8 Plus camera more so than the 7 Plus camera. Some of the details, this is where things can get really muddy, especially when you start mishmashing a whole bunch of stuff. The leaves down here, where you can see a lot of blending with the yellow tree in the background and the red bush in the foreground, or tree in the foreground, there's definitely a sharper contrast, not just sharper, but just there's more of a contrast in the iPhone 8 Plus photo with the juxtaposition. I also have to point out the yellow tree as well as the green tree standing in the distance are out of focus. So they definitely blurred to the point where I wonder if I took the right shot or if my hand was incredibly shaky. It's just the different depth of field with the iPhone 8 Plus camera, and it just could have been the focal point that I locked in on one versus the other. But it doesn't detract from the image necessarily, at least from my enjoyment. I don't know if I necessarily see anything else. I've already pointed out the sky. Less of a stark contrast on the right, more so on the left, being more of a dramatic difference. But it was a good shot. I really liked this shot. I enjoyed it. The only thing that would have made it better is taking it on a rainy day. I love the rain. So I'm definitely going to be giving it a workout here in the coming months as we roll through autumn. Just another example of yellows. So there's effectively nothing wrong with the iPhone 7 Plus picture, but it's just that I see just way more color saturation on the 8 more than the 7, especially in the right. And when we're talking about details and being able to perceive details, especially as we kind of go thick into the leaves, they kind of get lost in the 8, especially like down here. They get kind of really blurry and even at a distance, whereas they always stay sharp and clean and distinct in the iPhone 8 to its credit, to its great credit. You also have to keep in mind that the sky is not, I wouldn't say is dramatically different between the two, but keep in mind if you do see blur, it's not likely because of my hand, but because I was outside and the wind was blowing around. I would blame the wind more so than I would blame the camera for any blur that you might see specifically in these outdoor photos. And speaking of outdoor photos, we're not done with nature. Ha ha ha. So I threw these in there for everybody out there who's going, what, do I have to sit through a whole Star Wars video again? So this one, I'm not sure how I feel. The greens are definitely greener with the 8. Surprise, surprise. But much like I mentioned with that red stormtrooper earlier, sometimes it's very difficult to pick up the darker details in an image, and this is another spot where the iPhone 8, I wish it surfaced some of those details better. Like you can see the entire this entire brown part of the flower on the 7 Plus camera versus the 8. The 8's a bit darker, and I pretty much used the same focal point for each one of them. In terms of a more natural yellow, they're both yellow. Like both of these photos are yellow. But if you take a look specifically at the middle flower, taking this image just doesn't look to be smacking you in the face with color. It just looks like it's a more natural color. I think there's too much yellow. I think it was too yellow on the iPhone 7 Plus camera compared to the 8 Plus camera, which is so I'd almost take the darker parts going along with a more natural yellow. Not oversaturated, just perfectly saturated, and you can definitely tell. Moving on. Back indoors with the front room shot. I have just a few things to point out. Again, sharper details and richer colors with the 8. The thing here, though, was that even though I could pick up a bit of texture on the paint with respect to this particular area, the details between the molding and the paint were a bit muddied, specifically on the 7 Plus compared to the 8. And even up here, you can kind of see slight difference with it's almost like a denoising process that just kind of made that line a bit more muddy, barely perceivable, really, truthfully. Saturation was almost the same throughout. Maybe Sasquatch here looks a little nicer on the 8, but the images, while sharp on both sides, were definitely sharper on the 8. That's especially seen with this Hikari Groot standing here. The white was a bit more true to life on the 8. Shock. The 7 camera, the 7 Plus camera, showed it was like almost like a greenish hue was added. Certainly in spots. So whether that picked up on the green or its bias outright, this is definitely a green color, like a muted green color, not terribly green, of paint on the wall there. Either shot I think is pretty outstanding, but the 8 definitely edges it out. Okay, I know this is going to be like Vader overload for everybody, but I was like, okay, I'm in the dark. I'm going to take a shot. Like, literally, just take a shot, take a flash, see how well it works from both of them. Not to say this is an extreme case, but it is, right? I don't really take a lot of shots in the dark, but the 8 really impressed me outright. I mean, yeah, you definitely do have a lot of overexposure on the shelf, but details and things were a lot more crisp and clear, cleaner, better represented in the 8 Plus photo. I basically focused, the point was specifically on the shelf, the middle of the shelf, or wait, no, it wasn't up here, it was down here, it was on the Stormtroopers. I knew it had like somewhere in the middle. Maybe the only overexposure that I've seen here between the two, or specifically in this the Stormtrooper on the shelf. I've been collecting for years, I love this stuff, this is the play shop. I'm very, very happy to see that the shot that was taken, was crisp from edge to edge versus, a lot of the not as crisp shots that I've taken over the past year, specifically with the 7. You can see the difference even with the Pringles can up here. Pretty big difference, but it's like throughout the entire the entire photo. Jedi and I have fun in this room always. Sometimes we do videos. It's a great little backdrop for those types of videos too, the Star Wars types of videos that I do. So shot in the dark, flash. The paint on the wall is closer represented, or better represented on the 8 versus the 7. Oh gosh, look at the M&M Vader. Just to show you how blurry the 7 camera has been in the past. I mean, this is a pretty extreme condition, yes. But yeah, the 8 really shined here, not just because of the flash. Even my $10 million bill up here shows up more clearly in the 8 photo. Yeah, it's a good camera. It's a solid camera. I'm happy with the camera for the most part. And I say for the most part because I'm moving on to a part where I wasn't really impressed with the 8 Plus camera. If I said I was impressed with the 7 Plus camera previously, I apologize. There's a few numbers batting around in my head. I was told there was going to be no math on this video. So here's a shot, a flash shot with Jedi's 80s creatures. And this is where I was kind of surprised and a little disappointed. Sometimes in taking pictures with the flash on the iPhone 8 Plus, some areas get overexposed. So you can see Fizzgig's fur on the right side of his fur is overexposed, as well as the side of Alf's face overexposed. This could be because of the light source to the right, this window, but that we didn't have the same problem with the iPhone 7 at all. So between the two, I'd be inclined to save the 7 and maybe do a white balance, because even though color saturation and white balance was okay. Like, look, there's a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. It was okay on the 8. You can't salvage an overexposed shot. But I've noticed that when you're taking a photo with the flash, no matter how close or how far away, the iPhone 8 Plus flash apparatus may end up overexposing white, either in the foreground or background. Like specifically, you can see the crown molding or the wainscoting off to the side, whatever they call it. I don't know, this house stuff down there. It has a tendency to get overexposed at times, specifically with the iPhone 8 Plus camera. So that's one area where I don't believe the iPhone 8 Plus camera apparatus shines, specifically with the flash there's a chance that you may overexpose something in your shot. Whether or not it has anything to do with distance, I'm not sure. I don't believe it has anything to do with distance. I just think the way the flash fires and trying to it doesn't compensate for that type of light source, which is a little disappointing. I'm not sure if there'll be a way to attenuate that apart from just not taking photos with flashes when you've got a light source in the photo that may end up effectively decimating the shot. Here's another shot without the flash, just to show you the difference. I'd be happier with this shot because I could always make the 8 Plus pop. I could always brighten it in post. Even take the raw shot. You can see the colors are a lot more muted with Gonzo, Gizmo, Stay Puft, E.T., Alf, and Fizzgig. Am I missing any 80s creatures? Cute, cuddly creatures? Stay Puft, I wasn't going to throw in there, but I had him. I'm like, I'll just put him in there. He may actually be booted from this particular array. I think it's good to have Jedi. Jedi loves a Gizmo, by the way. She doesn't know much about Gremlins, but I think it's kind of neat to be able to expose her to the culture that I grew up with. I can't wait till she's old enough to watch the Dark Crystal with me, even though Fizzgig is not her favorite. Got to tell you, he's not my favorite either in terms of the way that they particularly they made him. So now on to the gimmick, the portrait mode, portrait lighting thing. I don't really want to do a portrait lighting demo. I did one portrait mode shot with Diana earlier, but since the portrait lighting does not work or exist on the iPhone 7 Plus camera, I didn't think it would be genuine to do a comparison in this video. So, I just think I just don't like it. I think, it's a neat idea, but I really dislike, look where Ray's chin here, her cheek, it just kind of, it's indented on either shot, more so on the 7 Plus angle than the 8. But it's still just, I don't know, it's fuzzy, not perfect. The detail on her arm, pretty nice. That's a nice little kind of like a halo effect. Everywhere else, I'm not sure. If it maybe, honestly, if that cheek would have been perfectly, just right there with the blur, I would have been happier with these two shots. Between the two, the gray on the jacket that Ray's wearing is again more genuine on the 8 compared to the 7. I would say sharpness is a wash for the most part. But it was a pretty easy shot to take, and I just don't know if I'm going to be using it all that often. I still think it's beta. I've yet to see any one of these gimmicky things really kind of pan out. But even the color of the sky, even though it's blurred out, it's much more natural with the 8. For whatever it's worth, I did take another shot between this with Ray and brightened her up with the one of the first lighting settings, and she definitely popped. So this is just a default regular shot, portrait mode, no effects added, just to make it a more genuine shot for color. There I am, fugly as ever, but I was like, all right, I'll try the selfie camera. I don't think we're going to see much of a difference, but I was kind of surprised. I did see a few differences, namely in details. So on the 7, yes, there are certain areas that look sharper than others, but I want you to take a look specifically at my forehead, and this is probably the only time I ever want you to concentrate on my forehead. But I would say that the skin tone, the skin color is more balanced throughout the iPhone 8 shot versus the 7. So the 7 the 7 Plus looks almost a little overexposed, not by much, but it's definitely more balanced on the 8 Plus. Now, whether they changed anything or was the angle, this is just something that I've seen over and over again. And not just even on the forehead, but even on my neckline down here, the skin is a little brighter on the 7 versus the 8. So just take a look at that, the neck muscle definition. It's just the skin is just more balanced, even on the 8 camera, and I held them same distance. I took these things seconds apart with the selfie camera. The only other thing I would say is the wall behind me, again, maybe showing the differences, if there are any. The light is, again, more balanced and blended on the 8 versus the 7, and that may be due to processing. It may be due just to the shot, but it would surprise me if it wasn't something else at play with the iPhone 8 camera apparatus, specifically the selfie cam apparatus, because those 3 areas all kind of, looking better, just slightly better, I don't think it has to do with the angle or the flash that fired both times for either one of the photos. There was a light source. You can see it kind of reflected in my glasses off to the side. But it did recommend using the flash, which I use, which is, the screen basically flashes. So Diana's father, her parents, and her family are visiting right now, and there's Jedi. Jedi's very interested in the watermelon, staying at a safe distance. But what I wanted to do was kind of just get an action shot, like they were posing and everything. Like, no, don't pose, just do an action shot, because I noticed something when I was kind of just playing around with it earlier. And I mentioned this even in the initial impressions. The camera doesn't blur as much, and I don't mean in taking a photo, but it seems to be able to better compensate for blurry shots, especially when you've got a subject in motion. So both Jedi and Hector here are both moving, and you can see that it's pretty prevalent. Like Hector's head is a little out of focus because it was moving here in the 7 Plus photo. This is not an HDR shot, so you will see areas of overexposure. But look at the his hand and the knife shot. I said, no, don't pose. I just do action, because that's the photo you're going to take. You're not going to take a photo that's everyone's sitting still. They're going to be moving around, especially. Oops, sorry, spoiler alert. Next one's a landscape. So anyway, so just it's a stark contrast, not just with the overexposure, just slightly, but specifically with focus. Like this is still an action shot. There's a little blur on the knife, not by much, but Hector's head is, not just more naturally colored. Look at the cabinets behind him, very naturally colored. Jedi's, again, more natural skin tone. But it's all the way throughout. Sharp and colorful are the photos that you can take with the iPhone 8 Plus camera versus the 7. Not to say 7's bad. But 8 is definitely that much more better. Much better? Yeah, it's better. You can only take a photo once, effectively, so you better have a good camera on you. You can see that even the napkin here is sharper, more defined in the 7, or the 8 versus the 7. And then even in the pineapple, some of the details get muddied on the 7 versus a more clear definition in the 8. It just surprises me that he was just cutting away. I was like, psh, and it could have just been the shot, but with so many elements moving, whether it would have been Hector or Jedi, everything, it just came out sharper and better and more defined on the 8. And this was, I think, an indicative, like, normal day, shot that y'all might take. Another area to point out up here, this is a little perturbing, and you'll see this in some upcoming images. The sharpness impressed me. You can see the clock on the stove a lot more sharp on the 8. You may have to get like really close to your screen too. I'm not exactly sure how you're watching it, but you'll see that if there was noise present, the denoiser, it gets really aggressive on the 8, and I think almost to the photo quality's detriment. I like the texture of the cabinetry a little more in the 7 Plus, more so than the 8. It's just, it looks a little over processed right now, and with that could get fixed in software. Whether they will, I don't know. Whether that's going to be, a horrible thing indefinitely, I doubt it. It's just something that I did note in more than one photo. There's a lot of that over processing happening, specifically with probably trying to eliminate noise. More so, of course, in the darker areas of the photo where there may be noise present. Everything else, pretty standard, but that's that shot. So now back to the mountains. Keep in mind this is a digital zoom. So I zoomed in. This is not about taking a look and comparing zooms necessarily, and I say that knowing full well that there's actually kind of a difference. I wanted to take a shot of the clouds, not in HDR, to my knowledge, but you can see that the clouds in the iPhone 8 shot are a bit more red. There's a red tint to them versus the whiter tint, if you can say that, on the iPhone 7 Plus camera. Well, this one actually looked closer to real life. There was actually kind of a light red pink tint. This is sunset is upon us, so we actually had some reddish light reflecting from off the clouds. And so this is actually it was a good shot. The sky is also more natural. You can see that weird blue color sky back with the 7 camera versus the 8, but the red was normal. So it kept the reds in the clouds. It was kind of a surprise. Another surprise, And this kind of goes back to what I was saying before with the cabinetry. Take a look specifically at this mountain range here. You can see a lot more detail in those trees, those faraway trees, in the 7 Plus camera versus the 8 Plus. The 8 Plus just totally muds things up. Remember, this is a digital zoom, but it speaks to the problem that I saw earlier. Like even in the trees in this particular clearing and down here, the processing they haven't quite nailed. They're over processing in my estimation. They need to tweak their algorithm because everything got muddied. Between the two, honestly, I would just as soon have the 7 Plus shot on this one. This is an area potentially where the iPhone 8 Plus will fail in comparison to the 7 Plus. Like the difference, if you just look at again, I know it's a digital zoom. I think it was like 3.9 for both of them. Yeah, the level of detail gets muddied out a lot with the processing on the 8 Plus. That's something that needs to continue to be tweaked. I don't know who to talk to at Apple, but I would definitely see this as a problem between these two images. The 7 Plus camera had nailed it versus the 8 Plus camera, which has just made it it's like watercolor here versus something with a lot more texture on the 7. The difference to me is pretty clear. It's pretty stark. Not that I use digital zoom all that often, but it'll show up again. So here we are at sunset, and again, look at the clouds. We did have some reddish yellow in the clouds. Not too much of a difference between the two otherwise. I would say that there is a bit more contrast with the leaves, whereas they kind of go more towards gray with the shot on the 7 Plus versus the 8. So there's the 8 Plus. The 8. Oops. Why do I keep flipping back to that shot? So this is, again, it kind of finds its way to the middle. Everything kind of gets muted versus not just sharper, but a more clear contrast with the leaves, as they juxtapose against each other with the various colors and textures. So everything was, a lot more natural, specifically with the 8 shot. I took it. I'm like, sure, I'll take it, see what happens. Another indoor shot, this time Pixie. There's the 7 Plus and the 8 Plus. No surprises. Details are a lot nicer on the 8 Plus as well as the color. Indoor shot, I wouldn't call it low light, but probably just, average light. No flash at all. I believe HDR shot. So dogs and kids are impossible to take pictures of. They're always moving. And even Pixie, she may not be moving that much, but she was definitely moving. And you can see just a little bit of blur on her nose on the 7 Plus shot versus the 8. Just a little bit. And of course, it's a lot more sharper and vibrant, specifically with the 8 Plus. Even in this lower light setting, and this is definitely, I would say, definitely lower light. We're doing this about dusk. So you can even see the hairs, Diana or Jedi's hairs on the floor on the 8 Plus camera versus the 7 Plus. Maybe I shouldn't upgrade. Yeah, so sharper definition throughout. It's a pretty impressive camera by and large. Okay, just for grins, I did a Star Wars fidget spinner. I was like, let me see what it goes. I want to see if it would be able to capture, this fidget spinner fully still. It did not. This is just kind of like a throwaway shot. I was like, let's just see what happens. But I will tell you, I focused in on the middle. It came out just a little more sharp with the iPhone 8 Plus versus the 7 Plus. I don't know why I would ever want, or anybody would ever want to take this shot. But even the detail with the lines on the underneath the glass top are a bit more defined, specifically with the 8 Plus versus the 7 Plus, which gets a little muddy. Here's another good shot. Indoors, very low light. We're talking the sun is definitely going down. But I was surprised. I'm like, this is not going to be a good shot, and it turned out to both of them tended to be pretty decent shots. But the sharpness and contrast and even color between the two, I feel, are night and day. I liked the whites a bit more in the iPhone 7 Plus shot versus the 8, which turned out to be a bit warm, which, by the way, was likely the temperature of the room outright, so I can't necessarily blame the camera for that. But the focus on the 8 Plus camera was astounding throughout. Even looking at the time on Vader's chest here, you can pick out better details on the 8 Plus sharpness and contrast, more so than the 7. But even Akbar up front, or the Stormtrooper, all the way back to Luke's face back there on the Hero Mashers, or Anakin's. They're just a blur on the 7 versus the 8. Boba Fett as well. pretty dramatic differences, and you can see just the sharpness and the contrast for Vader and any one of the characters. So yeah, I definitely like the 8 Plus camera on this one. Well, I'd likely rebalance the white, but not if that's the worst I have to do, then I'm doing well. Okay, so here's another area where I feel that the iPhone 7 Plus camera did a better job. This is like in pitch black with just a monitor lighting. So that's what you'll see. That's the only light in the room. Even though I would say that the iPhone 8 Plus image is definitely smoother, a lot of detail is lost. So we lose a lot of the detail in the curtains. We lose the detail in the definition of Vader's helmet. It almost like just disappears into the curtains on the 8 Plus camera versus the 7 Plus. We're talking, this is like, again, an extreme shot, but one where I think that the 7 Plus could be better adjusted. The 8 Plus camera is a little sharper in certain spots, but not in others. So while the lightsaber is a little more defined in the 8 Plus shot, if you take a look at the desk edge here, it gets really muddy. Like everything is over processed in the 8 Plus camera to get rid of noise. So I wish I could have the best of both worlds. I wish I could have the definition and texture of the 7 Plus camera, but the saturation and focus of the 8. So this is another one of those shots where I was a little disappointed with the 8 Plus camera. And you can tell like the texture in the curtains, and there should be a texture in the curtains. So they definitely need to tweak their processing algorithm. I was again surprised that the shot came out. It's even darker, like not like pitch black outside, but the sun is definitely down. The sky is dark. Stars are starting to come out, and I was like, let me see if I can get a shot of this toy. And so I focused specifically on the cockpit, and was pretty surprised with both the photos. They both turned out pretty well. The iPhone 7 is no slouch. But you can see it's kind of got almost like a greenish kind of hue to it versus a cleaner cream or a white, off-white ecru X-Wing in the iPhone 8 or 8 Plus shot. Even sharper definition specifically here between the two. One's a little more out of focus than the other. 8 Plus is definitely sharper. Certain ones or certain aspects, of course, are going to be out of focus depending on the focal point. But I'm just saying that even the ones that are out of focus, they're a bit more sharp on the 8 Plus versus the 7. Surprised me. Like this one, out of all the photos, I think this one surprised me most. I'm like, I was able to get that shot. Pretty impressive, but even the reds, pop a little more. The yellows pop a little more. You can see on the X-Wing outright on the 8 Plus. It's just sitting on a rock. Again, a photo I'd likely keep. Some of these shots are throwaways, like this one. I'm like, what? When would I ever need to, take a picture of my key holder? And I was just like, you know what? Again, it's dark. The only light's coming from the kitchen, which is a room away. Like, it's around the corner. It's like basically over here. So I'm like, well, let's see how well they do. And for the most part, they each. Spoiler alert. There's Jedi. So they each did a pretty good job, but it's like this one was like bathed in a neon yellow. Versus, I guess, a warmer light, which, again, we have warm light in the house, even at night with the light installations. So, a little sharper, not by much. I'm right up close, not really a lot of movement. For the most part, if I needed to take the shot, the iPhone 8 Plus camera is definitely better. Out of all the photos, I think this is the one I best aligned. I don't know how, but it's definitely, I think, a better shot for what it is. It's a horrible shot, but it's just kind of getting an idea of what an extreme might look like between the two. All right, Jedi, again, and she moves around a lot, so sometimes getting her, a shot of her is a challenge. We're talking nighttime. We have light from behind me, and that's really about the only light in the area. You can see one that's reflecting up here in the window. But normally these shots would turn out like this, which isn't bad. This is not a bad shot. This is the 7 Plus, of course, since it's on the left. In the 7 Plus photo, I appreciated the balance of texture and color saturation, specifically in the vintage Kenner Ewok Village playset on the 7 Plus. I appreciated the white balance more so on the 7 Plus than the 8 Plus. this is something that it's not something that you're going to see outright, but as soon as I point it out to you, you'll understand. Take a look at the giraffe, and I'm just going to leave the slider there. I got to be careful because I may accidentally move it the wrong way. So the detail on the giraffe is what I want you to pay attention to. So yeah, not only is the giraffe taken with the iPhone 8 Plus sharper, but you can see the level of detail on its markings. Pretty astounding. Yes, I think everybody out there has this same giraffe. But yeah, that's pretty astounding for a low light situation, no flash, indoors. I was pretty amazed with the iPhone 8 shot comparatively. Again, the colors are a bit more true to life as well in the iPhone 8. But like I said, it did skew a little off. I like the white balance a little more. If I adjusted the white balance in post, it would be fine. So let's go ahead and pause there on Jedi. You can see that even though she is moving around, so there is going to be blur. For the most part, in this shot, I would expect to see Jedi as she is. A little blurry. I mean, I would say as in focus as you could possibly get a subject this close, indoors, low light. That's been a standard iPhone 7 Plus shot for me for the past year. Far more definition in the iPhone 8 camera, as well as a more natural skin tone. It is possible that the white balance or the white shot is definitely more accurate to the room temperature in the iPhone 8 Plus. It's just something that I would point out. But there are some pretty dramatic differences, I would say, even with the detailing in the window behind me. And then there's so many other shots I could have taken, various things, but, inevitably these are the shots that I would normally take, and you're probably going to be watching a lot of videos of people, taking pictures of various things. I believe these are all indicative of the types of photos you could be getting. So there again is kind of the difference between, I think, just a weird. I don't know if I like the loss of some of the texture of the foreground image here, the hut, compared to on talking specifically about some of the loss of that on the iPhone 8 Plus versus the 7 Plus. Another thing that could be pointed out, my focal point was here. On the 7 Plus, it was somewhere around here, so you've got the depth of field. A lot of things that weren't in focus were definitely up on the ledge, but taking a more general shot, everything was pretty much in focus. And I do not believe this was an HDR shot. If it was an HDR shot, I would likely see doubling. Even in the 8 Plus photo, low light, you see a little bit of blurring of her fingers, but not too much. And now we've come full circle. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you liked the way I did this. I did it best I could. There are plenty of other shots that could be taken, but there's so many people who do these side-by-sides. I just wanted to take it from my angle, or I guess my perspective. But thank you, again, for continuing to ask questions, continuing to watch, like, comment, subscribe, everything you do. Interact with me across social. Follow Star Wars Radar if you're a fan of Star Wars like me. But I love you. I appreciate you. And may the Force be with you.